Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Aces Armour. It has been a while since we've last uploaded a devlog. Time seems to really be flying, but we have a huge amount of really exciting stuff to show off now. The principal feature here is locomotion. A huge amount of time and effort has gone into making a realistic driving system for tanks or any tracked vehicles, which is traditionally something which has given game devs massive problems in the past. However, despite working for tracked vehicles, it also can kind of be transplanted onto wheeled vehicles like our Blitz, which is pretty cool. So yeah, on top of the locomotion system, we got our T-34 nearly ready. We've also got our SDKFZ 250 coming along very nicely. We've also got the Opal Blitz finished, Flak 36 almost finished. We've started working on player interaction within assets within the world, environmental assets, map design, sound design, a bunch of VFX. So yeah, actually a lot to get through. We've also shared an early playable build showing off some of this stuff to our patrons, and there'll be a lot more of that coming soon. Starting with the assets, Sandipop, Nat, and Da Vinci have been working to create some incredible stuff. First off, we've been barreling towards needing another tank for our Panzer IV to fight against, as having a multi-crew demo with 2 tanks able to fight each other is a big early goal we want to achieve next year. Of course, this year, of course. Yeah, sort of like, you know, the archetypal enemy of the Panzer IV, the T-34 had to be that tank. So Sandipop has been working on that recently, with it coming along pretty nicely. Now the exterior and interior are pretty much in their finishing stages. After, you know, some optimization, unwrapping, etc., we'll of course be adding texture to it. Here's a little bit showing off how the interior looks. This is, of course, a pretty big step for us, and yeah, it means that basically sorting out all the infrastructure for the interior mechanics of the Panzer IV and using it as a test bed means that with vehicles going forward, the process is far more streamlined and takes a fraction of the time. So yeah, this is a model 1942 T-34, and in terms of mods for the T-34, we're looking at some pretty cool stuff, such as adding radios, add-on armor, switching out the M17 gasoline engine for the V2 diesel, and some small stuff like different tracks, handrails, external stowage bins, and fuel tanks. Nat, on the other hand, recently finished up the Opal Blitz, beautifully modeled and already driving around. We haven't exactly sorted out the mods for it yet, because it's not the highest priority, but ultimately, of course, you'll get some different variants. Even mounting flak cannons in the back, so that'll definitely be interesting. The SDKFZ 250 is making great progress, and this one is awesome actually, is one of our researchers, Dmitry Bushmakov, who restores World War II vehicles in the Czech Republic. And as it happens, he actually has a SDKFZ 250, so he's giving us basically all the references we could possibly want to model it. And his 250 is actually a survivor of the Battle of Stalingrad, which is pretty crazy. So the SDKFZ 250 also has some cool mods, such as mounting some different radio sets, or machine guns, and even cannons actually. So in game, this thing could be used for carrying infantry squads into battle, whilst being pretty much immune to small arms fire, whilst also being able to return fire with some potentially decent firepower. Moving on, we got the Flak 36, modeled by Mike, one of our former volunteers who has actually recently become a dev, thanks to our patrons. Yeah, so this is coming along very nicely, with some texturing being done on it currently. If there's one thing you do not want to see as a Russian tank crewman, it's probably this. In game, we will have to sort of universalize the operation of the artillery guns, even though it's technically not perfectly realistic, but it's just unfeasible to recreate the operation, crew members, animations of every single different piece, you know, with the AI having the knowledge of how to work them. The way they'll work in game is that artillery guns will have a commander who calls out targets and ammo type, a gunner who controls traverse and elevation of the gun and fires it, and a loader who obviously loads the cannon. And maybe some cannons will have an auxiliary loader too. And oh yeah, a BT7 very early in the works. We'll probably show more of that off soon. So yeah, those are the sort of military assets, I guess you could say. Now, let's move on to the environmental assets. So we've got DaVinci doing a beautiful job on those, with ammunition boxes, chairs, lamps. He's putting a lot of effort into each one, to the extent that they are pretty beautifully crafted with text and symbols telling you some interesting info on them. I think stuff like this goes a long way to add depth to a game. Of course, this ties in with the environment as a whole, which DaVinci has been cooking up after being promoted from prop modeler to environment designer. The area is modeled after the geographical elements of sort of eastern Ukraine and southwest Russia, where the initial theater is set. So we've been drafting up some plans for the general layout, such as ideas for where villages, rivers and roads and all that kind of stuff will be. And whilst we're looking at this map, I wanted to briefly say all this has been possible due to our supporters on Patreon. In the interest of making a game that is beholden to what the community wants, we're trying to make ourselves as community funded as possible. But of course that's dependent on you guys. So scrolling up the screen now is the list of our current patrons, which we absolutely can't thank enough. Patrons get access to frequent exclusive dev updates, exclusive builds like the driving build, and a bunch of other perks you can check on the Patreon website, a link in the description. We're approaching 100 patrons, and reaching that goal would be quite a milestone, as we're currently 26% of the way to our monthly goal. So if you really want to see this project, consider becoming a patron. It means so much to us. So yeah, the map has been a place with a lot of technical focus, as we need to focus on optimization everywhere we can, which of course we are. The map also needs to look good on the ground, as well as having good enough performance to sustain a long render distance, such as, you know, when you view it from a high altitude in an aircraft. And happy to say our optimization efforts in general have been coming along pretty nicely. Even in regards to assets, you know, getting poly counts down to honestly pretty nice levels of optimization. For some context, you know, this lamp has only around half the poly count than it originally did, without sacrificing much in terms of quality. And taking a quick look on Sketchfab, it's got 80 to 90% less polys than most of the stuff you see on there, while still looking great. So yeah. Lamp. Although it was handcrafted by DaVinci, so no wonder it's so great. Now, damn, there's actually so much to get through. The locomotion system. So Roberto Costa has been working on this recently, and essentially everything is built off the core principle of modularity. Everything needed to be drag and drop, parts able to be attached and manually configured or given templates from preset data assets. Roberto carried this over from everything else he worked on, including the flight ballistics, interaction, and now the locomotion system. This is basically for two big reasons: ease of development, streamlining this process for everyone else that has to work on it, as well as making a system which modders can use relatively easily. So yes, modders out there, the infrastructure for you to create a vehicle via inputting certain values is there in quite an organized way. Not to be too exhaustive, but here's a basic rundown of how it works. The system is divided into three components and a blueprint. The tank blueprints. This is the centralized hub where all the components are attached. Think of it as the core to which all the modular stuff that makes up the tank gets attached. Best case scenario, this is the only part of the process that may require any code from people looking to implement something, although I do hope we can fix that. Locomotion. So this contains the data for the tracks and the road wheels. This means that this component runs the suspension and friction calculations, as well as the translation of torque into tractive force. Steering. This is broadly analogous to the transmission and might be renamed to exactly that. This receives input from the tank blueprint and translates the data into effects for that specific type of system. Swapping out different versions of this component is the difference between a tank driving like a T-34 or driving like a Tiger. Because of that, it handles the clutch as well. Engine. It's an engine. Simple as. Multiple engines can be attached and used for various functions, like the turret drive, and of course the main engine itself. Completely modular, it also contains the gearbox logic, and while it's not supported just yet, it is planned to also include most of the logic behind damage to the locomotion system. Which leads me to the old PSA, don't go into reverse gear while going at 40 kilometers an hour, you will not like what happens. All this is to say, we've really gone all in on the driving system, which I suppose was a given as a result of it being such an important element of the game. To our knowledge, it is also actually the most realistic recreation of a tank's driving system in a publicly available game. This also comes with some baggage, such as a unique control system. We can't just have WASD for something like this. Instead, we've got a control system involving manual control of the tillers, gears, and gas, which sort of requires manipulation of all three to drive properly. Now, I should mention two things. This is only for realistic mode. Arcade will have WASD. And the second is, this does require some getting used to. We've had a real World War II tank driver as an advisor who says, considering the limitation of a keyboard, this is basically as good as it can get. Once you have 10 to 15 minutes to play around with the controls, you definitely do get the hang of it relatively quickly. But yeah, it's a really nice system. I think it would flourish with some kind of custom real-life setup with 2 tillers and driving pedals, but it's definitely still enjoyable just with the keyboard. And it means that the driver's position is actually a serious job now that has a pretty high skill ceiling. You will definitely feel if you have an amateur driver, but a good driver will give you a serious edge in combat. This map, as I was talking about earlier, is basically just a demo to test out our assets. See how everything works together and basically get it working from a technical perspective. Ultimately, we'll probably use something like Gaia to make the landscape's height map, and then go in with manual tools where necessary to add things, here and there. Character control, courtesy of Hudson, is also starting to feel very nice. We're using true first person, which means that the camera's perspective is actually at the character's head, so you can look down and see your feet and body and such, as opposed to most games which basically don't render the character model when in first person, and instead just use an overlay of arms and a gun. True first person is much more fitting for a milsim game, and also just because it seems more grounded when you can look down and see your character actually interacting with the world. The gun handling is also pretty nice at this point, ignoring the VFX and traces, which are just placeholders. By the way, the performance is slightly lacking because I'm running the game in the editor, which gives worse performance than if it were running in its own build or separate window. Also, we still have a lot of optimization to do and many different avenues to explore, but using this as a base to further improve from is pretty good. It's definitely a good place to start from. In other news, we've also brought on Sean, who's actually the creator of the realistic combat sound mod for War Thunder, and he's going to act as the sound dev, basically incorporating samples and stuff into the game. As of now, we've got some nice sound effects for the Panzer IV, using samples from a real Panzer IV engine, and the 2 different 75s. Also, some pretty nice artillery sounds for later. Lucas, our VFX guy, has also been working on some tank shell impacts and also ground impacts, although these will of course be expanded on later. Also, a huge shout out to Same, who's come onto the project basically as a C++ programmer and has really been an enormous asset to everyone here. We're probably going to be shipping out our demo once it's a little bit more refined and the interior functions are all working to a few YouTubers. So keep an eye out for that, and of course as our team grows, so do our running costs, so if you like what we're doing, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Honestly, we could not have got where we were without our patrons, and if just 1% of our viewers subscribed to our 5% a month tier, we'd reach our monthly funding goal, and I could upload 2 devlogs a month, as well as vastly increase the speed of development. think we've got 15 devs on the team now, and that's not including volunteers. So yeah, the team is growing pretty damn quick. But yeah, that's about all for now. Huge thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.